As the U.S. labor crisis rages on, U.S. freight rail unions are preparing to strike. Two unions representing half of all U.S. freight rail workers have demanded that there will be no new deal until quality of life issues are addressed. Workers are demanding vacation, sick days, and better attendance policies. A court-imposed cooling-off period expires this Friday. If the deal is not done by Friday, workers can strike. The Biden administration has publicly urged both sides to get back to the bargaining table and strike a deal. $2 billion of economic activity is at risk, just as inflation is raging and the country teeters on the brink of recession. About 40% of the nation's long-distance freight moves by railroad. Shutting down 7,000 trains a day would trigger retail product shortages and general factory shutdowns. So what does this mean for the railroad industry? What does it mean for labor? What does it mean for consumer prices? What does it mean for the U.S. economy? And, what does this mean for the future of the United States? But, before we get into all of that, please press the like button and leave us a comment below. We would love to hear from you. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon so that you are notified of upcoming videos when they are released. The two biggest freight rail unions in negotiations, big U.S. railroads, have drawn a line in the sand. Unions are demanding that quality of life language be included in the contract. Attendance policies, vacation pay, and sick days are the core issues. With no deals on these central issues, unions said that they will strike. The Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers and Trainmen and the Smart Transportation Division are the primary unions that represent 40% of all railroad union workers. Some smaller and less powerful unions have reached tentative agreements with the railroads. But they are relying on the most powerful unions to secure the quality of life provisions. The smaller unions have so-called Me Too agreements. That means whatever contract provisions benefit the largest and most powerful unions is automatically added to the contracts of all unions. If this contract is presented to our members in its current form, it will not pass, said a labor spokesperson. The workers want movement on attendance policies and not be afraid to take a sick day or vacation day without the fear of termination, the union said. There will be no ratification unless this is addressed, the union added. A railroad spokesperson refused to comment on ongoing negotiations. The Biden administration appointed a presidential emergency board to intervene in hopes of avoiding a strike. The board is making recommendations that it hopes both the railroads and labor unions could agree on. These core issues, as well as staffing, have been bones of contention over the last 2 years. More than 700 union workers quit after. The BNSF Railroad, which is owned by Warren Buffett, implemented a points-based attendance policy this year. That policy led to 700 workers quitting. That points-based system was later revised, but union workers still said that it was brutal because of safety issues. Under the points system, a worker would be penalized for taking a day off to attend their parent's funeral. The BNSF Railroad has contended that the points-based system is necessary so that it has enough workers to run its trains. Major U.S. railroads are under serious scrutiny from customers, regulators, and unions. The railroad has brought its labor woes upon itself, said the union. They have made steep staffing cuts to appease shareholders and improve their bottom line, and the workers are burned out, the union continued. All of the railroads they are hiring because the current labor contracts cannot keep workers on the job. The points system forces workers to be on call for 12 hours a day and to constantly stay an hour or less away from the job site. U.S. freight railroads say that they have been hiring aggressively. But, big U.S. railroads have reduced their headcount by 29% in the past 6 years. More than 7,000 trains would be stopped if the unions strike. And that would cost the U.S. economy $2 billion per day. And the railroads are not the only economic group affected. The trucking industry will be hurt if rail workers strike. Agriculture will be affected. Retail stores will not receive their goods to sell. Idling all 7,000 long-distance daily freight trains in the U.S. would require more than 460,000 additional long-haul trucks every day, said Auto President and CEO Chris Spear. That is not possible based on equipment availability and an existing shortage of 80,000 drivers, continued Spear. As such, any rail service disruption will create havoc in the supply chain and fuel inflationary pressures across the board, Spear also noted. A national service interruption is inevitable. But the time has arrived when certain customers will begin to be impacted if agreements are not reached, a spokesperson for the railroad noted. A rail labor union spokesperson told reporters, "The railroads cannot legally lock us out, so they are resorting to the extortion of the shippers. The Machinists Union struck the CSX Railroad in 1992 over a labor contract dispute. That was the last time Congress actually intervened into a railroad labor union strike. Then President Bush signed a Return to Work bill, effectively ordering the rail workers back on the job after a 2-day strike and rail service shutdown. These self-appointed titans of industry complain constantly about government regulation and interference. Except now when it comes to breaking the backs of their employees, a union representative stated. The union representative continued, saying, "It's time for the federal government to tell the CEOs who are running the nation's railroads into the ground that enough is enough. Congress should stay out of the rail dispute and tell the railroads to do what other business leaders do. Sit down and bargain a contract that your employees will accept," the union statement added. Bargaining talks are expected to continue throughout the week and the unions can strike as early as Friday. The railroad labor dispute is not the only ongoing labor action in the U.S. that could come to an economy-crippling strike. Amid a general labor crisis in the United States, workers are gaining the upper hand in agreements and disputes with employers. For example, coffee giant Starbucks has recently become the focus of labor union organizing. Starbucks Workers United, which is located with the nationwide Service Workers International Union, is trying to organize Starbucks workers. So far, the union has organized over 200 Starbucks stores. Starbucks is vigorously fighting unionization. But the union is showing signs of success in their efforts. Starbucks has over 9,000 stores in the United States and it is doing everything possible to fight unionization. So far, the Service Employees International Union has organized 210 of Starbucks' 9,000 stores in the United States. Starbucks employees earn high wages and have very comprehensive healthcare insurance. Employees also receive stock options and free college tuition. Starbucks employee turnover rate is 65% versus up to 400% for typical companies in its industry segment. The COVID-19 pandemic has changed the world of labor and emboldened employees to want to organize. "We started organizing in August of last year," says Casey Moore, a barista in Starbucks Workers United. Starbucks Workers United organized its very first Starbucks store in Buffalo a year ago. "There was a group of us kind of coming out of the pandemic, feeling very overworked and underpaid. But we didn't feel like we actually had the resources or the support from the company that we felt was essential," Moore continued. "People love working at Starbucks," says union organizer Chris Chafe. "And the company did do a lot of things, to be intentionally inclusive and welcoming to a lot of different kinds of workers in a way that was pretty unique in American culture and society and business," Chafe added. The problem is that Starbucks turned its back on strong practices during that pandemic, Chafe also noted. Starbucks workforce is simply not willing to be mistreated by a company that prior to the last couple of years, had made a different kind of effort to engage with them, Chafe said. And so they're looking for a strong, serious, real voice at the table, to work with the company to make it a better place to work again, Chafe continued. The union highlights Starbucks' illegal, unethical, and anti-union actions like store closings and firing pro-union employees. Starbucks CEO Schultz denies all of that, of course. CEO Schultz claims that there are only a very small number of disgruntled employees. Starbucks management says that unions are not really as progressive in American society as they say they are. In fact, Starbucks positions itself as the progressive company fighting the non-progressive union. This union organizing success compelled Schultz to return for a third stint as CEO in 2022 after retiring twice from the position. Earlier this year, 25 Starbucks stores per week were voting for unionization. In April 2022, the Amazon labor union managed to unionize an Amazon warehouse in Staten Island, New York. Last week, the Teamsters announced the creation of a new division of the Teamsters focused specifically on Amazon. Amazon representative declined to immediately when asked to comment. As the labor shortage in the U.S. rages on, workers around the country are rising up and demanding better working terms and conditions. Amazon also has a high employee injury rate. Amazon injury rates are nearly 80% higher than the warehousing industry average. But, if Amazon workers unionize, what will happen to consumer prices? Whatever the case, the United States is on the cusp of a rise in labor power. But, what do you think? Please press the like button and leave us a comment below. We would love to hear from you. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon so that you are notified of upcoming videos when they are released. Please share this video on social media. Thank you for watching.